Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Suzanne Culberg. She is an author and coach, and she helps overgivers and people pleasers learn to set boundaries and say no without feeling guilty. Welcome to the show, Suzanne.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Suzanne. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll be talking about how one can master setting of boundaries in their life. But before we come to this, Suzanne, let's understand a bit about your journey, your background, so that people know who they are listening to.
Well, I'm Suzanne Culberg, joining you from Sydney, Australia, so the future, I'm sure for many of your listeners. And they say you teach what you most need to learn so that you can learn it. And I had very poor boundaries for a long time. I was a people pleaser, I was a yes person, and it just got to the point where I was exhausted and feeling quite resentful. And, when somebody would ask something, in my head, I would be screaming no, but I'd be like, sure. And I guess the real turning point for me was becoming a mother and having my own children and realizing, did I want them to have this life for themselves? Did I want them to do everything for everyone else and nothing for themselves? So that was kind of the turning point and what started me on the journey to become the Nope coach that I am now.
Absolutely. So I want to understand from you, Suzanne, for the audience, is that why do people say no if they want to say, why do people say yes if they want to say no? And what is it that they want because they are saying yes to what they want to say no? There must be something that they want from inside. Help us understand that mindset.
I think the two main reasons would be, firstly, we want people to like us. So if somebody asks you something and you say no, part of you worries that, they won't like me. So I think that's a large part of it. And I also think we avoid conflict. So we think by saying no, and maybe there's been an experience in the past where we've said no and it has caused conflict, maybe in your family or maybe in a workplace situation. So that it's just easier to say yes and do the thing. But the conflict externally is avoided. But what I encourage people to think about is, what about the conflict inside? Like when you're like, sure, I'll bake the cookies. Yes, I'll stay back. Yes, I'll work the weekend. Like externally, everything's great and calm, but inside is a lot of unrest.
Absolutely, lot of unrest. So, firstly, let me understand, why are you called the Nope Coach? How from saying yes to everything you have become the Nope Coach? Tell us a bit about this, and have you mastered it to that level and how has been your experience in that sense? Did you make more friends or did you make more enemies?
That's such a great question. Have I mastered it? I don't think so. I don't think anyone truly ever masters everything, because there's always going to be a new challenge or a new level or a new time in your life. So I don't think that. Have I made more enemies? 100% yes. But I wonder, honestly, were people who were only valuing me because what I could do for them truly friends in the first place? So sometimes it's like, there will be people who fall away. There will be people who don't connect with you like they did before. But by ending those friendships, relationships, connections, it opens the doorway for people who do appreciate your boundaries, who do understand you, who do value you for that. So you tend to find people you truly connect with and not people you have to walk on eggshells around.
Absolutely, absolutely, Suzanne. Now, when we want to say no, but there are some connections, some relationships, some people whom you still have to say yes. The problem is, how do we know who are these people? Is it only because they are blood relations? Is it because they are among the category of friends? Is it because someone is a supervisor, a boss? Or is it that someone is very charmingly coming to you and asking for their work to get done? How do we determine, by using our intellect, by using our own self-care mechanism to be able to say, no to really no, but yes to some people who are, who could be of benefit or who could be actually of use to you. So that point in time, you are able to, at least say yes for those sake, either for relations or for anything. I want to understand this because we live in a society. We need each other at any point in time.
Well, I think it's what are they asking you to do? So I think sometimes people think no is a complete sentence. I will agree with that to a point. But say, for example, you said, "Hey, Suzanne, would you like to come on my live show? And here's the time." And it's like 2 a.m. for me in Sydney. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'd love to come on your show. That slot doesn't really work for me. Have you got anything else available? Or I could be, say, like 2 hours later or however long. So I think sometimes it could be a no, not in this capacity, or no right now. Like, you have great boundaries. When you approach a guest for the show, you're like, here is the thing. This is available for 2 months after that. And it's just like, I think sometimes when we're really clear with our ask, with what we want from the other person, how long it's available for, what is involved, like you're like, it's going to be live streamed here. This is the link. Please let me know this time before. Like, we are being really clear. And as Brene Brown says, she's like the queen of boundaries, unofficial, but she says clear is kind. And sometimes people won't be clear because they're like, I don't want to be demanding or I don't want to be pushy. But if you're like, this is what's involved to be on my show or to work in this place or to attend this thing, this is what's expected. This is when you turn up. This is how long we go for. Then the people can make an informed decision. Like, when you're not clear, when you're like, I don't know, I hope this guy turns up. I don't even know what we're going to be talking about or for how long. Just little things like in the workplace, in relationships with family, you can pretty much say no to anything or yes to anything, and also never making an assumption. So say like we do this episode, sometimes people like, I heard you on this show. So they make an assumption, oh, you'll come on my show. And it's like, assumptions, they have a word for it when you assume in Australia, but like, it's never good to assume. Or if someone's done it for you before, like you're on my guest on my show before, so this time we're going to talk about this, and it's like, excuse me, was there any actual invite here? And I think your question as to with a family member or with a workplace, so for example, I'm a mum, I have 2 young kids. They're expected chores that they are required to do, like the dishes and making their beds. Do they want to do these things? No. Do I want to do these things? No. So sometimes it's not like you say no to everything, you live on a desert island and somebody feeds you grapes while you relax on the beach. I'm not saying that. There are things that obviously you've got to say yes to, like, paying your bills and obeying the speed limits, these kinds of things. But so often it's things like baking the cookies for the school sale or driving and picking somebody up who's quite capable of catching public transport, or who their inability to organize themselves is not my problem. That's when we go into the realms of overgiving and overdoing.
Absolutely. Now, where does this word, guilty come in? If I say no, I move on. If I say yes, the other person never feels guilty about, taking advantage of you. So how should I not feel guilty about saying no to anything? Why does this guilt come to us at all? Means, can't we live or say no without feeling any guilt? When does this guilt come? Does it come with every no, or does it come with only some no's?
Well, I don't think it comes with every no. Like, if you were like, Suzanne, let's go watch a horror movie. No, thank you. I don't do horror. What else is showing? I wouldn't feel guilty in that case. But I can think of an example. As I said, I've got 2 children. My daughter came to me and she's like, my school project is due and I need to make a diorama. I was like, okay, cool. When? Tomorrow. And I'm like, how long have you known about this? 3 weeks. So let me get this straight. You were assigned this assignment 3 weeks ago. You're telling me about it at 10 o'clock the night before. And, part of me did feel so guilty. Like, no, I'm not staying up, because the lesson you're going to learn is I'd rather her fail in primary school where it doesn't matter and it's not going to be on any record then later on not have learnt any skills. So I think the guilt comes where we feel like we're letting other people down, or we feel like we're a horrible person or a horrible mother or father or whatever, when really it's kind of that whole cruel to be kind. It's like, no, I'm not going to help you with this. And ever since then, as soon as she gets a project, she's home from school, she's like, here it is. And it's like that lesson has been so powerful.
Right. But what about others? With children, you are, within family, it's still a different ball game. And perhaps we feel guilty, but outside people, do we feel enough guilty or do we do not feel as much guilty?
Well, I think it very much depends on the person. Some people feel guilty about anything. Like my sister and I recently went to the United States. It was our first time there. And she felt really guilty. Like if someone said, hey, do you want fries with that? Or would you like to buy a bag? Or like, by saying no to these people, she's like, I feel so bad. And I was like, but why? That's their job. They've got to try for the upsell. Would you like a shirt? Would you like some shoes? That's what they do. They're not like expecting if they get an extra bonus, yes, or they get commission. But some of us just feel we're so conditioned to people please, to say yes, to be kind, that any sort of no, like, would you like a drink? No, thank you. Or it's just conditioning. Other people don't care. Like you said, you said it so well. Like if I say yes, I say no. If someone says, do I want this? Because the thing is, if you say no, like, then you can ask someone else, or they can ask someone else. Like, you're not the person's only hope. You're not Obi-Wan Kenobi. So I think when you realize that, like, they can ask the next person, do they want fries with that? Or they ask the next person. So after my daughter tried with me with the homework, she tried with her dad. He was also a no. But even in the workplace, you might feel like if I don't stay back, I'm letting the team down or whatever. But maybe the team is putting too much work on. Maybe they're asking too much of people. And maybe they need to hire some more people. Like we hear so many people saying, I'm doing the work of 3 people or whatever. Yeah, because you're doing the work of 3 people. If you actually said no, then they might actually realize that they need to hire somebody else, or that they're asking too much. But because you keep doing it, they keep giving it to you.
Right. You talk about, and talking of people pleasing, you talk about that, people pleasing is enabling. I want to understand that. And so that makes me ask this question, that actually people who want to say no, say yes, because they want to open new opportunities for them. Does it work that way? Because they feel that they are enabling themselves, empowering perhaps by saying no, yes, even if they want to say no. Help us understand this enabling part. And is my assumption regarding this correct?
Well, sometimes people will do something with an agenda. So you've got a podcast, I've got a podcast. If somebody sends me a message and says, hey, Suzanne, would you like to do a review swap? I review your show, you review mine. Like, there is a question there. I have the agency to say yes or no. But what tends to happen is people will be like, hey, I've reviewed your show. Hey, I've shared your show. Here's mine. And then they get all bent out of shape if it's not reciprocated. And I think that's how the people pleasing can come in. We go and do things that people haven't asked for. We don't even know if it's what they want. We make an assumption because it's what we want. And instead of saying at the front end, let's make an agreement, we just do something and then get annoyed when it's not reciprocated. Especially, it's funny if people share stuff on social media. I personally don't use social media. And it's like, if you share all my stuff and then you're like, well, can you share my stuff? It's like, have you even looked at my page? I'm not active there. So it's really weird when we do something in hopes of it being reciprocated instead of just asking directly, because if we ask, they might say no and then we feel rejected.
Right. So, yeah, Susan, if you were about to add something more to that?
Well, I was just thinking there's so many areas in life that sometimes we don't even realize that we're doing this. Or in terms of people pleasing being enabling, if like you do something for somebody who's capable of doing it themselves, then you're enabling them not to do it, but you're also enabling them to leave it to you. Oh, Suzanne will do it. Like, it's fine. I'll leave it. And like, it's so easy. Because the thing is, a real buzzword right now is narcissists. Like, everyone talks about narcissists. And that's really overt. But people pleasing is covert. It's like, I'm doing this in hopes that you do something for me. It's still manipulative. It's just kind of more shiny.
Right, right. So, for those people who would want to say no but are not able to say no, does boundaries help? Is boundary better than saying no? Because then people will know what they should approach for, what they should not approach for. How do we understand this thing called boundary setting?
I'm going to forget who to attribute this quote to, but somebody, they describe boundaries as the distance in which I can love you and me simultaneously. And I just really liked that, because sometimes people
Right.
are afraid of boundaries because they're like, that means I have to say no, that means I'm selfish, that means all this sort of stuff. But so often, if people ask you for something, let's pick an example. Say someone says to me, "Hey, Suzanne, can you help me move house?" I have a bad back, and I'm not very good at wrapping things up that are precious. Like, I'm not the best person to ask. So if someone asks me for something like that, I'm unable to help them move house. So, thank you for inviting me. I can't really help with that. I've got a bad back. What I could do is I could make you a meal, or I could watch your kids. Like, saying what you can do instead. So a boundary isn't like, that's it, no, go away. It can be a negotiation of, what is available. Say, same as I gave the example, do you want to come on my podcast? I record it, whatever, and it ends up being 2 a.m. Australian time. I'd love to come on the show, but that's the middle of the night for me. Is there any leeway there? So sometimes the negotiation, the boundary is saying, what you're available for, and then what they're available for, and meeting midway. And sometimes people don't ever ask. Like, I wonder, you also being a podcast host, sometimes I get on with people and they're like, oh, it's 2 a.m. I was like, why didn't you ask? I could have done a different time. It's like, oh, I don't want to put you out. But, and sometimes, like, I ask people and they're like, no, it's a live show. It's always recorded at 12 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much. I'm not the best fit for a guest, But I think, or they're afraid they'll miss out the opportunity. Like, it's like, I'll never get asked again. So it's like setting the boundary. It's like, for you, when are you available to record for, or when are you available to help other people with, or how many times a week? Like, I'll help somebody out once a week. After that, like, my capacity is done for this week. I'm not available now, but I could help you out next time. And I think, setting that boundary and knowing what your standards are is a personal choice, and that allows you so much more freedom and flexibility.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's why you have got many tools where you can set the hours that you work, and others can also see if there are these hours that are working for them too. And if they are not checking them out and just asking more and more questions, it means they are adding to more messages and emails for you, then they are certainly to be left out. They are not the right person. Maybe they may be a great expert, but they cannot be someone, because podcasting is not just about not just about being an expert, but also about the logistics. And someone can just uh, throw themselves out of a podcast just because they are not good at logistics. It is in so many areas of our life. If we don't do that, then we are only adding to our troubles, because that is where we have got tools like Calendly or so many other things which clearly shows where one is available or not available. If it is not, or maybe half an hour difference or something, then you can ask for a favor. But then you can't educate everyone. They have to educate themselves, like we do on our podcast. And that brings me to your podcast, Suzanne, the Nope Coach. Tell us a bit about your podcast. There's so much to learn from you. I'm sure this is just one episode with you. There you've got so many episodes, and people can learn from that.
So the Nope Coach podcast, there's over 400 episodes now. It's actually my second podcast, but I started it with full Nope Coach energy. There is no jingle, no intro, no outro, no editing. And for the first 365 episodes, there was no show notes. Because the thing is, when I listen to a show, if someone mentions a resource or a quote or whatever, I go Google it. So it takes a lot of energy for me to create these resources, as you said, or time or
Right.
capacity. Now that I have like ChatGPT, I put the episode in there and like summarize. That's easy. But like it's my place that I show up, I interview some amazing guests, I do some solo episodes, but it's just exploring, people pleasing, boundaries, perfectionism, procrastination, why we get stuck in these patterns that don't serve us, and more importantly, how to overcome them.
Absolutely, absolutely, Suzanne. So I want to understand one more thing is that how do we set these boundaries in the workplace, in in the office setting? There, how easy it is to say no to especially supervisors. And secondly, many a times we say yes because we don't, as they say in office, do not burn the bridges that you have built, keep them alive even when do not have a good experience in an office, even in when your exit interviews, there also you do not say any wrong thing about anyone. So when whole atmosphere, this whole society has been created around not being conformist and not speaking the truth, so that you are not losing out on anything, how do we get our mindset to saying no in so many areas of our life, especially in an office setting?
In an office setting, like one of the common examples people will give me is my boss asked me to do this task. They said it would take 5 minutes. It took me 2 hours. And the thing is, communication is key. So without being sarcastic, without being rude, like just saying, okay, you gave me this task. I realize, like, I appreciate, I understand that you think it will take 5 minutes. Last time I did it, or when I do it, it takes me 2 hours. So can you show me the way that this is going to be done? Because sometimes it's about educating, but not in that sarcastic, mean, rude kind of way. Because there are times where sometimes people will go, well, show me what you're doing. And they'll have a look and they'll be like, oh, well, no, do it like this.
Yeah.
Or other times it will be an eye-opening moment for them where they'll be like, I had no idea. Because they had no idea because you didn't say anything. You stayed past the time. You worked after hours. You did all this stuff and you just kept it really quiet. And this seed of resentment was building. So in the workplace, it's having the conversation. It's like saying when someone asks you to do something that's beyond the scope of your agreement. Like I remember I worked somewhere once and they wanted me to clean these industrial fans because I worked in a gym. And I was like, I don't feel safe climbing this ladder up to this industrial fan. Like I really feel this is something that should be done by somebody who is fitted to do this.
Absolutely.
And the boss was just like, that never occurred to me. Everyone else has just whooped up the ladder. So I think sometimes it's having that discussion and sharing, and people like they don't want to look weak or they don't want to start a confrontation or they don't want to, but it's more often than not, people are really receptive to asking for things, but we just don't ever ask. And we think, oh, we're in the workplace, we have to do these hours, we have to do this. And almost all workplaces, at least here in Australia, have a standard or have an agreement that you work to. So if you say, actually, like, not show me where this is, like, not rude, but if you're just really open about it, like, I think this is, asking a bit much, or I think this is beyond the capacity here, like, can you tell me how I could do this more efficiently? If you're open to it, a lot of places are, but because we've never asked or said anything, we've just smiled and nodded and secretly seethed while we've worked through our lunch break or worked on the weekend, to actually say, up until now, I've stayed late, but going forward, this is really important for me that I'm home on time. You don't have to say why, but a lot of people will have their shifts when they have children because they have someone else's needs that's important. But often the reason these bridges are burnt, as you mentioned, is because the resentment builds to the point where we just explode, and that's not healthy for anyone. So actually having the conversation, like, I know you've allotted 5 minutes for this, can you show me how it can be done in 5 minutes, can be an eye-opener on both sides of both parties.
Absolutely. There is much to learn from you, Suzanne, about all these things, about setting boundaries, about saying no. So those people who would want to, learn more from you, about your podcast, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
2 best places to find me is my website, SuzanneCulberg.com, and I also have a YouTube channel. I know this is also going on to your YouTube as well. And fortunately, with a name like mine, I'm the only one in the world. If you look up Suzanne Culberg, the Note Coach, you will find me. I'd love for you to subscribe and follow me on YouTube.
Absolutely, absolutely. Say yes to the Nope Coach, and you will. That's my good way of saying this, and you will make a lot of difference to your life. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.